Hello, and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. I'm delighted to have you with me as we look at Exodus 4, verses 10 through 12. We're still at Mount Sinai. God has commissioned Moses to return to Egypt to set the people free, and Moses has listed several objections already for reasons why he doesn't think he should be the one to go. And now his objection becomes very personal. Moses says, I am not a man of words. Please, Lord, not yesterday or the day before that, or even since you started speaking to your servant, I'm heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue. It's a very clumsy sentence. And I think for a long time, I assumed that Moses was just suffering from what a lot of people suffer from, and that is a fear of public speaking. He doesn't want to be up front, and he doesn't feel particularly eloquent. But I've become convinced that this is more than that Moses actually suffers from a speech impediment. And I'm basing this on an article that I read by Jeremy Schipper and Nyasha Jr. about Moses, where they talk about the phrase heavy of mouth, and note that the same phrase occurs in an Akkadian medical text among many other medical conditions as a medical condition, something that needs treatment. So we don't have details from that text about what this condition implies, but some kind of speech impediment seems to be the issue here. And the context supports this reading. Remember, just before this, God has done a healing miracle with Moses' skin. And so he's afflicted him with a skin disease and then healed him. And right after Moses' objection, Yahweh responds by saying, Who makes people? Who makes people deaf or mute or sighted or blind? Isn't that me? And so this focus on physical disability in that scene seems to support the idea that Moses is actually raising an objection based on his own impairment. So Moses could perform signs, but he worried that his physical disability would get in the way of his calling. He forgot that Yahweh was responsible to equip him. Moses' eyes should have been on God, but they were on himself. Verse 12, as God responds, I find quite amusing. In Hebrew, God's response is, I will be with your mouth. So remember back in chapter 3, verse 12, Moses has said, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? And Yahweh's response was, I will be with you. So now Moses says, but my mouth is heavy and my tongue is heavy and I can't do this. And God says, I'll be with your mouth too. It's a very amusing moment where God is meeting Moses right at his point of greatest vulnerability and saying, your disability, your impairment is not too much for me. I already took it into account. I know you inside and out, and I chose you for this task. So don't you think I had a plan? So God doesn't make mistakes, either in creation or in calling. God knew full well what Moses' strengths were and what his weaknesses were, and he already had made provisions to support Moses' weaknesses. We'll talk about those next week. You can read ahead and see if you can anticipate what I'm going to say. But I'd like to close today's video by sharing with you some insights from a book that I read just a few months ago. It's a book by Bethany McKinney Fox called Disability and the Way of Jesus: Holistic Healing in the Gospels and the Church. This blew my mind. I had not delved into disability studies before, and I learned so much from this book, and it's kind of opened up a whole bunch more reading for me because I want to keep learning. Several of the things that she points out in the book I want to share with you. So those with physical or intellectual impairments are not just people to be ministered to. They have something to offer our communities. We are worse off without their contributions. And so here Moses, who himself is impaired, is being called by God to a speaking ministry. And God will provide all the support he needs to do that job well. Now I want to offer a quote from page 94 of Bethany's book. She says, every living person has limitations, and very often people with disabilities can thrive without receiving a physical cure. She is reminding us that we tend to think of like the default as able-bodied, fully able-bodied people, But actually, we all have limitations along a spectrum. We all start out unable to care for ourselves, and most of us end our lives unable to fully care for ourselves. And along the way in between, we have a variety of limitations. I also want to share with you a quote from page 16 in the book where she's explaining about the social model of disability studies. And she says certain limitations accompany certain impairments, but that a person is only disabled by these limitations if society is structured in ways that exclude the full participation of people who need to access the world in particular ways. So one of the really great things about this book is she has a lot of firsthand testimonies of people who live with various impairments, and they testify, many of them, that they're not seeking physical healing. They feel just fine with who they are. The problem comes when they run up against barriers to inclusion or barriers to accessibility that are put in place by those building buildings or running programs that don't have people like them in mind. And so it's a really challenging book that helps us to kind of open our eyes and see a wider spectrum of humanity. And I kept thinking about Moses as I read the book. Moses, who had this limitation with his speech, but was called by God and equipped by God to do this important work. So what are your limitations? God knew what he was doing when he made you. And whatever he's calling you to do, you can step out in faith and respond with obedience, not with your eyes on yourself and what you feel like you lack, but keeping your eyes on God and trusting that he has your best in mind and that he'll provide everything you need. I hope you have a great week. I've really enjoyed interacting with you in the comment section, so leave a comment if you have a thought about this passage or a question, and I will see you again next week.